Smile.
But I'm not happy.
People
Why are you
staring.
I don't want to do this.
You have to. They'll know
No one
something's
cares
wrong.
about your
Why
life.
is that bad?
Nobody cares. They won't understand.
Nobody
I want to go
cares.
home. You'll hurt their feelings.
This was ridiculous.
What are we even talking about?
Just
You want
keep
them to
them
think
happy.
What if they
They're
think
gonna
you're
be mean.
stupid?
Just keep them happy.
Just keep them happy.
Just lie.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, here me and you, let's keep it real honest.
Hello, friends, family, acquaintances, perfect strangers, whoever else is here. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time to Real Honest, which is the podcast where I share candid thoughts and feelings about life, love, and relationships, God and church, adulting, the workplace, and everything in between. I am your host. My name is Samantha, and you probably will not always like me, but I will always do my best to be honest with you. I hope everyone listening is having a good week, because I am not. But you know, we're here. I've worked out. I've meditated. Did everything I could to get in a better mood, and we will see how this goes. I do have a really positive goals check-in this week, so I actually have spent a lot of time on my book in the past week. I sent chapter 3 to my sister and friends that are reading and giving feedback on the book for me, which is 3 chapters behind schedule, but it's better than nothing. The most recent chapter that I wrote actually took me a really, really long time because I have cryptograms in it and I had to find one. Because if any of you have read ACOTAR and discussed it with me, you know that my biggest pet peeve, which there are many when it comes to that book, but my biggest pet peeve is that there is a puzzle that the main character has to solve. Well, it's a riddle. There's a riddle she has to answer to save the world. And she gets the riddle, this all happens in the back portion of the book. I want to say it's all in the last 50 pages. But so let's just say at the beginning of the last act, she gets this riddle. And as a reader, I could answer the riddle immediately. And then I'm just turning page after page of her guessing, and her guessing badly, and her being wrong, and everyone almost dying and being destroyed because she didn't know a very simple answer to a very simple riddle. And I don't know, maybe this was an author's choice of she wanted to play with the audience knowing something that the main character didn't know. Personally, it made me hate the main character. I thought she was stupid, and I was like, if you fail at this, everyone deserves it because you're awful. And for me personally, I just think it's more fun with that kind of stuff as a reader to either figure it out with the main character, or just to be given the answer, because it was kind of it took her so long to figure it out that it wasn't satisfying when she finally got there. So anyway, I just say all that to say, whenever I have riddles and puzzles and stuff in my book, I try to come up with something that people are not gonna immediately be able to answer. And this was a cryptogram in particular, right? So it's a coded message that people would have to decode. So it's if readers want to, they can decode it, or they can just keep reading and the main character will decode it for them. But either way, I wanted to use a real cipher that actually exists that people could use in real life. So I had to think of the message that I wanted her to decode and then code it. So I had to work backwards, and basically the scene I was writing is that this girl is doing a cryptography challenge against another girl. So then I was okay, so then there would be rounds of this, and then I had to come up with multiple ones, and they had to be different for each round, and that's what took me the absolute longest time. So it's the chapter is fairly short, but it's just the one scene took me 5 ever. But I did it, and I'm super proud of it, and I think it's fun and interesting. I'm also making great progress on my 10,000 steps a day. About a year and a half ago, I decided, I was just thinking of what's going to be the most sustainable change that I can make when it comes to fitness, something that is going to be the same if I'm traveling or if my job changes, what my schedule changes dramatically, what's going to be the thing for me to be most consistent. And I figured that it would just be walking. So I started off like just tracking how many steps I was generally getting a day. And then I set my first goal off of that. And so I think I started with a goal of like 4,000 steps a day. And then once I did that consistently for a few months, I went to 5, 6, 7, so on and so forth. And now I'm at 10. And I definitely can't say that I like enjoyed getting 10,000 steps a day until I got to like 20 days of getting 10,000 steps. And now I'm in like a good rhythm where it's really fun and I enjoy it. But definitely the baby steps when it comes to trying to be consistent with something, I highly, highly, highly recommend. Like when my goal was 5,000 a day, it was hard to get 5,000 steps in a day. And I was sitting there like, how on earth is anyone getting 10,000 steps a day? Like, I just don't think that it's even possible. And now I'm like, oh, it's totally possible. It's super easy. And it's like hard for me to not get 10,000 steps in a day, which has been cool. What do I feel like God is teaching me right now? I think it's a lot of be patient, be consistent, have faith, do the last thing I told you to do. One of my pastors has talked a lot about like when you feel like you're not hearing from God or you're trying something and it's not working and you're praying about it and you feel like you're not getting an answer, you should go back to the last thing that God told you to do. Which I think is really easy if there's a clear thing that God has told you to do and you haven't done it. But I think for a lot of us, like we've been waiting to be told what to do, and maybe we're not doing the last thing that we were told to do because we didn't hear him then and don't know what the thing was. So this is just, I always phrase this as like hearing from God. I mean, if you don't believe in God and you want to call it the universe or like whatever, do with whatever I say next what you will. But for me, I don't really believe in coincidences. So if I feel like something is a coincidence or I'm getting like a deja vu feeling, that's more of like, I need to pay attention, like God's talking to me type situation. And I remember the other day I was talking to a friend and I was telling her, we were talking about a recent, well, I don't know how recent it was, but we were talking about a sermon where our pastor was talking about like, the last thing that God told you to do, in terms of like, that's your next step if you don't know where to go. But our pastor also wrote this book called Do the New You, where he talks a lot about how you should do the next thing that you would do if you were the person that you want to be. Okay, so for example, it's like if I want to be a writer, I should be writing right now. Like if I want to be a published author, I should be working on a book. Like if I want to be skinnier, I should be exercising. If I want to gain weight, I should be exercising. If I want to be a singer, I should be singing, and it's really, really simple, but so many of us just kind of like, we have these dreams and these goals and we just kind of sit and want it to fall out of the sky, where realistically, if I were to get like discovered tomorrow and get a record deal, I do not have the songwriting capability, nor do I have the vocal capability or the stamina to ever go on tour or to like make a great record. Like those just are not skills that I have. So those are skills that I work on because I enjoy them. And if it ever turns into something, then like, cool. If something ever happens, like then I'll have the skills. But if the thing were to happen tomorrow, I wouldn't have the skills. So like one of the things that I've been working on is like when I'm on my walking pad, I do like a whole concert and I just sing a bunch of songs, because if I've learned anything from the Eras tour, it's that Taylor Swift has amazing stamina and has like really, really, really worked on vocals for this tour. And like literally, if you were one of those people that like gets on artists for lip syncing or tracking their vocals, get on a treadmill for 30 minutes and try to sing for a straight 30 minutes and like let me know how that goes for you, because it is really hard, but it's really fun. So I've also talked on past episodes about how a lot of times I miss what God is saying to me because I have an idea in my head of what it's supposed to look like or sound like when God talks to me. And because he's talking to me in a way that doesn't fit my vision or my expectation, like I just don't hear it at all. So I have a lot of job related stress right now. And I've always joked that I want to get paid to do nothing and that I wish that somebody would just deposit $1 million into my bank account every year so that I can just do whatever I want. And whenever I apply to jobs, I always try to think like, is this really what I want to do? Like, is this getting me closer to something that interests me, or is this just a means to an end that's going to make money? And when I sit and dream about my ideal day, I always tell myself, like, if money was no object and I didn't have to work, I would spend my day singing and writing music and working on novels and reading, and there are all these things that I would do. And yet, every single time I get a day where I have no work to do, I end up on the couch binge watching Grey's or Bridgerton for the 30th time or something else. Like, that's all I'm ever doing is like laying there watching TV. And my excuse is like, this is because this is a rare day. I never get a day to do nothing. And I have to exert so much energy with working and volunteering every day that if I get a day that's free, that's just for me, I'm going to take the day to rest. But if I had every day indefinitely to rest, then I would accomplish all of these things. And like, it's just not true. Like, I would still just be laying there. So I was talking to this friend of mine and we were discussing how I would love to utilize the downtime that I have right now to really focus on my book. And that's a really hard thing to do because any of my personal creative projects are always the things that get put on the back burner because I'm like, work has to absolutely come first. And then volunteering comes after that because like people need me to do stuff in my role at church. And then my friends come after that, and family and like other people that like need me. And so basically the only times that I write a song or write my book or even like just sit down and read is if there is like my to-do list is cleared. Like if I've completed everything else that I had to do for somebody else and I finally have like a clear free time for myself, that's when I might think about working on one of my projects. But usually that's at the tail end of the day and I'm tired and my creative projects require a lot of energy from me, but I've already used all my energy doing all the other things for other people, and that's why I'm sitting on the couch. So since I'm job hunting, I was telling my friend, like, while I'm looking for a new job, I want to, like, I don't know, apply to 5 to 10 jobs a day. And then once I've done that, I want to work on my book for at least 1 hour every single day. And that's just like something that I want to do for me because I have the time right now. And as soon as I get a new job and I'm super busy from 9 to 5 every day, again, I'm not going to have the time to work on this. Like, I know how this works. Like, I have had the in-office jobs that are super busy. I've also had the remote jobs that are super busy. And either way, like if I'm super busy, like I always put my book off. So it's like I should be appreciating this time that I'm not super busy, that I can write. But then every time I sit down to write, I'm second guessing myself. I'm like, well, you only applied to 10 jobs today. You should apply to 20. Like if you have an hour to write your book, you can use that hour to apply to more jobs because you haven't heard from anyone yet. And it's just this constant back and forth that I'm struggling with. And then this friend has been praying for me with the job stuff and also for peace and quiet and time to like work on my book. And I was thanking her for praying for me and just giving her an update. And I was just kind of thinking like, do you think that God cares if I write this book or not? Because the book isn't about Jesus. Like it's about secret agents and training at boarding school. And she was telling me like, yeah, I think you enjoyed writing it. Like, I think it's still a story that will inspire people. It's a cool coming of age story. I think God wants you to like enjoy what you do with your time. And yeah, I think he absolutely cares about details like that. And that's when I started to think like, maybe that's why I haven't heard anything from like any of these job applications that I put in. Like maybe it's because I've been begging God for time to write my book And God's been like, well, I gave it to you. You're just not using it for that. You're using it to sit on the couch and watch TV or to apply for jobs. And so that's when I sat and I spent like a straight 4 hours like working on the latest chapter of my book. And I had like everything on Do Not Disturb and was just like in the zone, like working on this chapter. And not even 5 minutes after I sent it to my friends, like I got an email from one of the places I applied to asking me to schedule an interview. And part of me was like, this could totally be a coincidence, but more of me is like, oh, interesting. Like God actually does ask me to do things that have absolutely nothing to do with church and serving, which I think is also a common misconception, is when people in church talk about like, you're supposed to live your life for Jesus and like serve other people. It seems like the idea is the only way to do that is to be serving in a church capacity or like serving in like some other outreach way of like working at a homeless shelter or whatever. And I'm sitting here thinking like, I don't know if my book is gonna matter. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever gonna read this and it's gonna help them through a hard time. And if that's not what it does, then what's the point of it? But I have no way to find out what it does if I never finish and publish it. So the main topic today is consistency, because I truly believe that consistency is the key to pretty much everything. I think any goal that you are working toward in any area of your life is going to require you to be consistent in that thing. And your consistency doesn't have to look like anyone else's. It just has to work for you. You know, maybe you join a book club that meets monthly and you can't commit to monthly. So maybe your personal goal for yourself is to attend the book club once a quarter. Consistently attending once a quarter is still better than just sporadic attending, so that the other people in the book club are going to get used to like, okay, that person's going to be here once a quarter. Great. When it comes to relationships, I think that you need to consistently show up for people in order to build a strong relationship. And kind of on the same thread of what I talked about a couple weeks ago, which was, you know, setting expectations, and you teach people what to expect from you based on your behavior. So that's based on your consistency. Like if you are consistently showing up, people are going to expect you to keep showing up. If you're consistently flaking, people are going to expect you to keep flaking. And some people are still going to invite you regardless. And other people are going to be like, this person has consistently not shown up, so why am I going to bother to continue inviting them? I think that most of my friends are not consistent. And for a lot of them, they don't have the ability to be consistent, like whether it's just a personality trait or they have a super demanding job or something else in their life that demands more of their attention that makes them an unreliable friend, like whatever it is. Like I try to figure out what it is and empathize with it. But the main thing for me is that it drives me to be more consistent, because that's what I crave in all of my relationships is consistency. So I am like, if this person isn't going to be consistent with me, I'm going to be consistent with them in hopes that like that improves things down the road. Hasn't really worked out yet, so maybe it's not a good strategy. But I definitely notice when I am inconsistent and what that does to friendships. So like there was a friend I lost maybe last year, maybe 2 years ago, that we really connected in the beginning and like really liked each other, but there just was a disconnect in what we wanted to do. So like she's more like go to happy hour, get drunk, or like stay home and get high. And I'm more like, let's just sit on the couch and talk about life, like without the substances. She's super outgoing and loves to be around people, and I am super introverted and love to be alone in my house. So she would invite me to happy hour a lot, and the times that I would go, it would be stressful, and then everybody would get drunk but me, and drunk people drive me insane unless I'm drunk too. So then I would get annoyed and not want to be there. And she also lives an hour from me. So, like, that's more of a commitment on either side, that either we're both going to drive half an hour and meet in the middle, or somebody's driving an hour. So, at least with her wanting to do happy hour all the time, that was more, let's meet in the middle. And with me wanting to be like, no, come to me or I'll come to you, like, then it's like, all right, well, one of us is in the car for an hour, and that's not necessarily fun. And I never had a conversation with her about this. I really should have, but I just stopped showing up to happy hour. And on the one hand, it was almost always a group thing. So I never felt bad, because I was like, it's not like she's there by herself. Like, she's not waiting for me. Like, it's always a group happy hour. When if we were hanging out at one of our houses, it was usually more of a one-on-one thing. And I would never, ever, ever cancel on her if it was a one-on-one thing at one of our houses. But if it was a group thing at the happy hour, I almost always would say that I was going to go and then not show up. And so then she stopped inviting me. And then because we stopped having the happy hours, like, usually it was at the happy hour that one of us would be like, hey, do you want to, like, come over this weekend and do XYZ? And so those conversations weren't happening because we weren't seeing each other at happy hour. And I think she got annoyed that I was so inconsistent with, like, saying that I wanted to be friends and wanted to hang out. And then she'd be like, all right, come meet at whatever bar on whatever day. And I absolutely should have said to her, like, I don't want to hang out in a bar. But I didn't say that. I just didn't go. And so she dropped me as a friend, and I'm kind of sad because I really liked her, but that happens. And then I've also had awkward experiences at local churches where, like, I've joined a local church, joined the small group for young adult group, whatever I was doing in my 20s, and I would consistently attend small group, but I would also consistently try to shift the conversation to something deeper when the rest of the group was not interested in that. Like, they were all totally chill to just meet every week and talk about work and the weather and take cute pics for Instagram and, like, not really get to know each other. So, and they were all very consistent in that. It was like, we're going to go to the same Panera on the same day of every week all year long and have the same surface level conversation. And that's just not what I wanted. So I was consistently, like, trying to be like, can you tell me more? Like, you know, the question was, share about a hard time that you've gone through that, like, you prayed and you felt like God answered you. And your answer was, oh yeah, I've experienced that. I'd be like, can you tell me more? Like, give some details. Tell us the story. And they'd be like, well, I experienced it and God helped me. I'm like, did he though? And yeah, those people were very much like not trying to hang out with me anymore. So right now, most of my friends are long distance. And the ones that are super inconsistent, I think it more comes from the fact that our friendship is long distance. Like, it's easier to pay attention to the people that are right in front of you. And so especially the ones that, like, if they work in an office or they attend a local church or they have, like, a gym or some type of community that they're, like, physically leaving their home and, like, around these people on a regular basis, that's very different than me. Like, my whole life is virtual pretty much. So it's like all my friends live in my phone. So it's not like I have to drive or fly anywhere to see them. It's like I'm just hopping over from WhatsApp to iMessage to be in the next conversation. But I think a lot of my friends, quite frankly, forget about me when their in-person life is very loud. And then when their in-person life is, like, quiet, then they're like, oh yeah, Samantha, let me see how she's doing. And it's very frustrating to me to have friends reach out and say, like, hey, how are you? And I tell them how I'm doing, and then they don't respond for weeks after that, because that sends me the message that they really didn't care how I was doing, when they probably did care how I was doing, because if they didn't care, they wouldn't have asked, and they probably got distracted and cleared the notification or whatever and just, like, forgot. But that makes me feel, like, super unloved, especially when they are super present for a short amount of time. Like, I have a lot of friends that they will reach out and they will consistently talk to me every single day for like 2 weeks, and then I'll get used to having them as a regular person that I talk to every day, and then they'll disappear for a couple months and I am like, hello. And usually I just roll with it. If I love the person and I really want them in my life, I will just roll with it. Like, I will just be like, all right, we're talking daily right now, we're talking weekly right now, we're talking monthly right now. Like, you just set the pace and I'm here. Like, you just let me know. But at the same time, it's frustrating because it does change how I interact with them. Like, the friend that reaches out to me and says like, hey, how are you doing? I really want to hear about your life. Like, please send me one of my personal podcasts of your life. And then I do that and I spend like 30 minutes giving them updates and then they don't respond. Then the next time they say that to me, I'm not going to send them a 30-minute podcast about my life. I'm going to send them like a 5-minute one, or I'm going to just be like, everything's fine. Or I'll honestly be like, it's not great. How are things with you? And I'm just not going to give them as much, because if they're not giving it back to me, I am like, okay, why put forth the energy? Now, I do have friends that are really good at communicating when their consistency is going to change. So a lot of them are like, there's a lot going on at work right now. Like, I'm going to be less available. I would love to talk to you about XYZ, but I can't do it like soon. Let's schedule some time. I have friends that are just like better in person. Like, they truly are just bad texters. And because they're not seeing me every day, I'm not top of mind. And then when I do text them, they're like, oh my gosh, I really do want to talk to you. Like, can we schedule a FaceTime or whatever? So I do really appreciate that when people are intentional in that way. Because I know I've talked about in the past, like, people process their mental health issues in different ways. So like, there are some people that like get depressed or they get super anxious or whatever's going on and they recoil from the world. Whereas like, I am out here like telling everyone like, I'm depressed. Please talk to me. I need friends. So if you consistently want to be in someone's life and want to have a relationship with them, but you're not able to be consistent in terms of the frequency or the way that you're showing up, I just think that is an important thing to communicate. If the inconsistency is stemming from like, today I want to be your friend and tomorrow I don't, I still think that's something to be communicated, but like, I mean, hey, everyone's entitled to change their mind. So like, maybe you hang out with somebody and it's awesome and you're like, this person is cool, I want to be their friend. And then next time you hang out with them and they're like, that was shitty, it wasn't a good experience, like I never want to talk to that person again. And then maybe you run into them somewhere and you're like, oh, I'll try again. And you're like, oh, they're cool, I'll hang out with them again. And like, maybe it just is like a super wishy-washy relationship. And I mean, I personally don't want that kind of relationship, but that doesn't mean that nobody does. So I think that if it's truly like the inconsistency is because like you just can't decide what you want and you guys are just going back and forth, like, yeah, I do think that should be communicated if you're aware of it and can communicate it. But I also think that while everyone is entitled to change their mind, be aware of like what that is doing to the other person. Because if you are communicating inconsistently, like if you're the type of person that like, you're talking to me every single day for 3 weeks and then you stop talking to me for the next 3 months because you have decided that you no longer want to be friends, that I'm sitting here like, okay, so you wanted to be friends and now you don't, and now you do and now you don't. Like, I can either ping pong with you or I can be like, I don't want a friend like that. Like, I want somebody that consistently likes me and wants to hang out with me and talk to me on a regular basis. And like, since you liked me yesterday and you don't like me today, like we could not talk today and maybe you'll like me again tomorrow. Or I could just be like, let's just not. Like, let's just not. My examples for this are going to bleed into the hard convo because I actually learned a lot about myself recently from a hard conversation that I had with my sister. And the lead up to that is my cousin was recently in the hospital and my sister and I disagreed with like how to reach out to him. So I am the type of person that, like, if I'm in the hospital, I would want my friends to just drop everything and come be with me. So I immediately was like, I'll rearrange things at work. Like, I'll hop on the road right now. See you in 3 hours. Whereas my sister, like, really needs some more planning. So my cousin starts a group chat with my sister and I to tell us that he's in the hospital again. And my sister responds with something to the effect of, you know, hate to hear this. Please let me know if there's anything I can do. I'm here for you, like something like that. And he responded with, thanks, I'll let you know. And that was kind of it. And I know my cousin well enough to know that he was not going to let her know. Like, he's just not the kind of person who's going to say, hey, please come keep me company. Like, because he thinks it's rude and insensitive to, like, ask people to take time off work. When, if anyone has been hospitalized or knows someone who has been hospitalized, there's nothing to do. Like, hospitals are just really, really boring. So it's like, you can watch TV if you've got your computer or an iPad or something with you, like maybe play some games, but it's like, as friends and family of somebody who's in the hospital, like, really the only thing that you can offer them is company while they're just sitting there having tests run and waiting for results and waiting to get better. Like, there's nothing that you can do. Like, you're not a doctor. You can't fix them. You can't go to work for them. Like, you can really only offer them company. So I gave him a few days to ask for company, and he didn't. So I just offered it, and I was like, hey, literally, like, I can drop everything. I can be there tomorrow. Like, if it would be helpful to you to have somebody just sit with you while you're going through this. And he was super receptive to it and was like, yeah, actually, that would be great. And then gave me all the info about, like, where he was staying and the room number and all of that. Now, he lives in the same city as my sister. Like, I had to travel there. She's already there. So I did, after he gave me all the info, I was like, well, I guess I should check with my sister and, like, make sure she even can have a house guest right now. Days later, she tells me that this really, really bothered her. Like, she thought that it was super inappropriate and insensitive of me to tell our cousin that I would visit him without asking her if I could stay at her house. And it was a very interesting, hard conversation because there's a lot of, like, feeling and misinterpretation there. Because, you know, my family, I tell you guys this all the time, my family loves to tell me that I, like, play with semantics, and I am just like, it's because I want to be clear. So, like, for her to tell me, like, I'm upset that you told him you were coming before you asked me, I went back and looked at the messages again, and I was like, I didn't tell him I was coming. I told him I could be there as early as tomorrow. Like, this was all a hypothetical to me. Like, the three of us are in a group chat. I'm sitting here gauging how long does he think he's going to be there, and does he want somebody to sit with him? And I'm also sitting there gauging, like, are you going to visit him? And do you have the time and capacity for me to stay with you? But she totally read it as, like, I told him that I'm coming and, like, asked if I could stay with her as an afterthought. And so it's kind of like improvements can be made on both ends, because her position was that it was inappropriate of me to ask if I could stay with her in the group chat with my cousin. I should have asked her one-on-one. And I felt like there was nothing wrong with her saying in the group chat, like, no, you can't stay with me. There's too much going on at work. I'm stressed. I need to be alone. Or she could have sent that to me in a one-on-one message if for some reason she had an issue, like, with our cousin knowing that she didn't want me to stay with her for the week. But either way, she felt like because I asked him in our group chat, I asked him in the group chat, like, essentially to stop her from saying no, and it took her choice out of it, and I forced her to, like, invite me to stay with her. And so then, like, the first few days that I was there, she was, like, mad about this, and, like, I had no idea, because the only message that I got from her was like, sure, of course, like, you can come anytime, as she always says to me. So this turned into a larger problem of her just being angry that I was there. And it was like little things were just piling up of, like, me drinking her water and putting dishes back in the wrong place. And I felt like I was going out of my way to be clean and to put things back exactly as I found them. And, like, I even washed her dishes if she had left them in the sink because I knew she was super busy and, like, I had a lot of time. And I was like, I'm being the most considerate house guest ever. And then she was like not feeling like that at all. So she sits me down and explains to me like where all this is coming from and how she's feeling and what's upsetting her and all of this. And I'm listening to her. And as I'm listening to her, it's just making me feel really, really bad. Like I just feel attacked that she thinks that like first of all, that she thinks that I would ask her a question in a group chat to manipulate her answer. And that she thinks I would just like bulldoze in and just like give no care to like her or how she's doing. Like, it's just like, wow, my sister does not know me at all. And she even put one of the things into practice that I talked about on my podcast in a recent episode where I think I was talking about like, what is your immediate expectation when you hear something from someone, and what is that actually their intent? And so the example that she gave me was like earlier in our group chat with our cousin, as we were asking him, every day we're asking like, what tests are you running? Are we getting any closer to a diagnosis? Like, how are you feeling? And he had said that like he was needing to get an MRI, and I responded to that with, oh, I just got one this morning and here are the results from it. And so my sister was telling me that like when I sent that, like she was reading the message in the group chat, she was like, here goes Samantha making things about herself again. And she said that she did pause and think like, okay, let me assume positive intent here. Like clearly she's not trying to be selfish. And this just is funny because in the podcast episode I did, where I gave examples of like, this person said this to me and this was my immediate reaction, I did have people reach out that were super upset, that are like, how dare you think that of me? Like your assumptions were so off and so wrong. And I was like, well, if you listen to the episode, you heard me say, I don't know this person well or at all, which is why I had this assumption of them that totally had no basis for it. And I had the same reaction where like when my sister said like her immediate reaction was like, there goes Samantha being selfish again. I was sitting there like, but you've known me for 31 years. Like, I've never been a selfish person. Like, why is your immediate reaction to anything that I would ever say that I'm being selfish? And I know that I have mentioned on here before too, like a lot of people do the whole, like somebody says something and you respond with a commonality in your life to try to connect. And I have learned within the past few years that the people who don't do that receive those of us who do it as being selfish or turning it back on ourselves, and because we're shifting the conversation away from the other person. And so I wasn't trying to shift the conversation away from my cousin. I just know my cousin really well. And I know that like he doesn't like monotony and just like having to have, like, he's sitting in the hospital, right? So just imagine you're sitting in the hospital, you're getting the same texts from all of your friends and all of your family members every single day. Like, everyone is just saying, how are you feeling? What tests are you getting today? Any diagnosis? When do you think you're gonna get out? And you're just responding to the same people over and over and over again. It's literally the same thing as like what I learned working in entertainment news is that when celebrities are awful to reporters, it's like, well, it is exhausting. Like, your 10-hour day is 3 to 10-minute interviews back to back the whole day. You're being asked the same questions over and over and over again. And if you don't like the questions, you're going to get a little irritable by the end of it. And so I felt like my sister was really driving like the questions of like, hey, how are you doing? And like, to her credit, she was focusing on him because he's sick. And I was just trying to offer some other conversation. Like, I was just trying to give him something else to think about, something else to talk about, put his mind on something else, and just give him like a normal conversation. Because if he were not in the hospital, we would volley back and forth of here's what's going on with you and here's what's going on with me. And like, us focusing on him being in the hospital isn't changing anything. So like, why not just keep talking as we normally would if you weren't? And I explain all this to my sister, and she totally understands. She's like, I totally know that you are not being selfish, and I know that you know our cousin super well, and that he did not receive it as you being selfish at all. And something that she is working on in therapy is, one of the things is assuming positive intent always, and the other thing is asking for what you need. So she said, like, she put it out there, because I think I was a little upset with her for like not having visited him yet. I was like, you live here, like how could you not have gone to see him? And she's like, well, I did tell him that I'm here if he needs me to bring him something, if he needs me to do anything, if he wants me to sit with him. Like, I laid out all those choices and said, like, I'm here if you need me. And he said he would let me know, and he hasn't let me know. And so I'm just like, yes, okay, I think asking somebody for what they need is great, but I also think that you can know a person well enough to know what they need, and you can also just logically deduce, what does a person in the hospital need? Company. Like, there's really nothing else that you can do for him. And we go back and forth for a bit, and it really wasn't heated. It wasn't an argument. Like, it was just her like calmly explaining her position and me calmly explaining mine. But I still felt like shit the whole conversation. It was just like, okay, so like what I was receiving from it was like, great, my sister still thinks that I'm selfish, and apparently I'm a terrible house guest. And even though I'm sitting here washing dishes that are not mine, I shouldn't do that because I'm putting them back in the wrong place. And I can't drink her water, and I can't do this, and I can't do that. And no one cares that I drove 3 hours to come sit with my cousin that's in the hospital every single day, and that I'm taking time off work to do that. And it's just like, my sister had a really, really busy week at work. Like, she was very stressed and had a lot going on. And so her perspective was like, my job is super slow right now, so it's not hard for me to just take the day and go sit in the hospital with my cousin the whole day, which is true. But even if I had been super busy, I would have taken it off and done that because I love my cousin and I want him to have company. That's what I would want if I were in the hospital. And that was what we learned in the end, was mine and my sister's main disconnect, is that I treat other people how I want to be treated, and she just focuses on what they specifically, explicitly tell her that they want. And she is not to ever make any assumptions. And if they don't tell her what they want, then she doesn't know, and then it doesn't happen. And this conversation with my sister honestly went on for a couple days. But it was good for us because it's like we would have a conversation, and then I would go sit with my cousin in the hospital and I would talk to him about it. And he would give me his perspective of like what he was getting from my position and what he was getting from my sister's position. And I pride myself in reading my friends really well. My cousin is one of my very good friends. And I was able, like, and I did point blank ask him, like, do you want somebody here sitting with you? And he's like, yeah, it's nice. Like, I appreciate the company. Like, I love to have you around to talk to. Like, he had coworkers visiting him, and like that, like, made the day pass faster and like helped him get his mind off things. And I was like, yeah, I knew that about you. Like, that's why I didn't wait for you to ask me, because I knew you weren't going to ask me. And he said, well, I don't like to ask people to take off work. And I know like you have to drive here and coordinate staying with your sister or whatever you have to do. And like, I don't want to have people like fuss over me. And I am just like, yeah, because you are the sweetest soul in the whole wide world, but like you deserve to be fussed over. Like, you're in the hospital and the only thing that you can ask people for is their time. So, but I know that you're not going to ask for it. So that's why I'm just giving it to you. And I'm happy to give it to you. Like, do not worry about like work. Don't worry about the travel, any of that. Like, I am here for you because I love you and you matter to me. And that's what's important. And again, I pride myself on reading my close friends. So, I mean, like, we had good days and bad days. Like, there were some days that he was like up and talking and I'd be there the whole day and we would talk. And there were some days that he just like wasn't in a good mood and wasn't feeling it. And I would just sit there and we would just sit there in silence and it was fine. And then there were some days that he would be super irritable and I could tell that he like really didn't want anyone around, but he's too polite to ask me to leave. So I'd be like, hey, I'm going to head out. I'll check on you later. And like, I would just text him and just gauge based on the conversation, like if he wanted me around that day or not. And I later discussed that with my sister too, because I was trying to pinpoint, like, is she bad at reading people, or are he and I just closer friends than she and him are? Which, like, I'm not saying that either of these things is like a good thing or a bad thing or, anything like that. It's just like, what is the thing that's driving like her thought process versus my thought process. And she was telling me how you cannot make assumptions for anything ever. Like, you cannot assume what people want. You can only go off of the facts of what they tell you. To which I do think that there is a large degree of truth in that. But at the same time, I'm sitting there wondering, like, do you just not know any of your friends well? And so she gives me an example of one of her very best friends. And she's like, I know her super well. Like, I know her favorite authors. I know her favorite foods. Like, I know the way she thinks. I know who she likes to work with at work and who she doesn't. And I know like how she goes about making decisions and that kind of thing. And she's like, but if this friend of mine is having a really bad day and like, calls me crying or whatever, like, I have to ask, like, do you want to go out tonight? Like, should I get a group of people together for happy hour? Or do you want me to come over with ice cream? Do you want to watch a movie? Like, because it's not always the same. Like, depending on what it is that made her sad, there's a different approach that I have to take to like help her feel better. And so I do have to ask like which thing it is. And so that is what I found really interesting, because it goes back to what I'm saying about consistency. So like, I think that my sister is operating with this friend of hers perfectly. I think that's exactly what she should do, because it sounds like this friend is not consistent in what she needs when she's sad. Like, there are some people that are like, anytime I'm sad, I want a friend to pop over with ice cream. But if she consistently is feeling down and needing a different pick-me-up, then yeah, of course, you're never going to know and you should ask. I also think that there is a difference between like physical things that you can do for someone and caring for them emotionally and like conversationally. So I feel like that was also the disconnect when my sister and I were talking about like, how well you know someone and like knowing what to do, is all of the examples that she gave were like physically knowing what to do. And all of the examples I gave were intellectually or emotionally knowing what to say, which largely stems from the fact that all my sister's friends are in person and all of my friends I have to fly to see. So for me, when I'm sad, like, I'm a girl that always wants you to show up with ice cream and watch Disney movies, but like, the majority of my friends do not have the physical means to do that because I am sad often. But so I think about what my friends say that makes me feel better when I'm sad. And I have some friends that all they say is that sucks, or sorry to hear that. Or if I'm complaining about like something at work, they'll be like, oh, well, tomorrow will be better. And that's just not helpful to me. And my sister was asking, like, she was like, okay, but the friend who says stuff like that, like, do you tell her what you want her to say? Or are you just expecting her to know and then she doesn't know and you get mad at her? And I told my sister, like, so no, I don't tell her what to say, but I also don't expect her to know. She consistently reacts the same way every time I'm sad. And so I have decided that she is not the friend to support me when I'm sad. Like, she is a keep it light, fun, and happy girl. And so she is a girl that I talk to when I'm feeling light, fun, and happy. And when I'm feeling down, I don't go to her because she doesn't help me. I go to one of my friends that do help me. And my sister was like, well, how is it that those friends know what to say? Like, have you just known them longer and you guys have talked about it? And I'm like, no, actually, we've never talked about it. Like, I have never, not one time in my entire life, and I have known Cameron since I was 6, I have never said to him, this is what I want you to say or do when I'm sad. And he does not say or do the same thing every time when I'm sad. I actually never know what Cameron's going to say. And I think that I know him really, really well. And what I think is interesting about this is I actually find the people that I don't know as well to be more predictable. Like, my friend that's kind of just the eternal optimist and really can't go deep with me, I don't know her super well. I know like surface level things about her. I know like her favorite color. I know what she likes to read. I know TV shows, but like, I don't really know much about her past. I don't know like the depths of her soul. I don't know what makes her tick, Whereas like I do know that stuff about Cameron. But so the first friend, it's like I can predict what she is going to say like if I say anything negative, if I say I'm having a shitty day at work, I've applied to 100 jobs and haven't heard anything back, this boy hurt my feelings, like I can literally predict what she will say, and she does it like clockwork every single time. And I can't ever predict how Cameron's going to react. So like what I was telling my sister, I was like, it's not that there's a specific thing that I need to hear. It's that Cameron just always reacts in a way that makes me feel seen and makes me feel heard, and like he knows me and appreciates me, and he heard what I said and he knows how I feel. Whereas like I don't get that from the other friend. And my sister was asking like, well, can you explain to her like what you want her to say? Like give her some examples of like what Cameron does. And just for me personally, I feel like if I do that, I'm talking to myself. And if I want to talk to myself, I will look in the mirror and actually talk to myself. So I'm just like, if one person is not able to give me what I need for the situation, I just go to a different friend. Like I've talked about the friendship zones in previous episodes, right? So there's like there are the acquaintances, there are friends that like they're only a work friend or they're only a gym friend, and then you have your super close friends and your best friends. Like my thing is like, if I am sad, I have to go to one of the people in my inner circle. There's like 4 of them in the world. And if I just want to shoot the shit and like just randomly have someone kind of go on about my day with me, like here's a picture of my food, like here's what I'm reading right now, like I don't go to the inner circle for that. I go to my light, fun, happy friends, because that's what our relationship is. And I'm fine with that. Like I'm not trying to force all of my acquaintances to become friends, and I'm not trying to force all of my friends to become really close best friends. Like I think it's fine to have people at different levels. Now I think that if, let's say the girl that I stopped going to when I'm sad because she doesn't react in ways that are helpful to me, if she cared about that and if she wanted to change it and she was like, hey, I really want to be a person that like you call when you're sad, I would totally be open to having that conversation with her. But I don't think that she really cares, and I definitely don't care. Like I'm just like, you know, I serve a purpose in her life and she serves a purpose in mine, and it's a very different purpose than my other friends serve, and like I have no problem with that. But what I think is fascinating is in the conversation with my sister, like I was complaining about something and she was trying to like give me advice, and I started to get pissed off, and she's like, do you like understand that this is why you're so hard to talk to, because you're saying that you have all these problems and I'm giving you solutions and you're getting super combative and just don't want to try anything and everything I say is wrong. And I am just like, because for you to give me these solutions, you would have to think or assume that I haven't tried them. And I'm telling you, like I have been walking with depression since I was 13. Like I know how to deal with it. I know what works and I know what doesn't. I've been in therapy for a very long time. Like I know what to try, and I don't need you to tell me what you think I should do to not be sad. I need someone to say, I see you. I hear and I feel that you are really, really hurting, and that breaks my heart because I love you and I don't want you to hurt. And she just like repeated verbatim back to me. And this is my worst nightmare because it's so awkward and so uncomfortable. Except that she added some more words to the end, and then we just both started crying, and it was like awful, but also really cathartic and great. And the thing that I love about this is I have been stuck in this, like, I don't want to teach people like how to interact with me because I do feel like I'm talking to myself, and I feel like if they're going to just be parrots, like I'm going to be like, Polly want a cracker? And Polly's going to be like, Polly want a cracker? And then it's just like so awkward. And it was really, really, really awkward. But she really wanted that. She's like, she really, really wanted to know like what was going to be helpful for me to hear from her. And we did talk about it later too, where I was like, you know, if that was a regular interaction, like I think if every time we talked, I had to say like, here's what would make me feel better right now if you would say this or do this. Like, I don't think that would work for me in the long term. But I think that what my sister and I like really realized is that we don't know each other well. And we just had a very candid and open conversation about like, I really want to know you and I don't. And I'm sorry. Like, we were in the same house for 20 years and I don't know how we did that without getting to know each other, but like we didn't. And let's get to know each other now. And honestly, it was really beautiful and really helpful. So I think what I learned is to not discredit like actually laying out for someone what they can do, because sometimes it does work. My movie recommendation this week is Turtles All the Way Down. This is a film adaptation of a John Green book. Love him. The movie is on Max, and it's about a girl with OCD. And one of my favorite things about this movie is that it very accurately depicts what biting my nails is like for me, where it's just like intrusive thoughts being like, bite them, and me being like, I don't want to, and being like, you have to. It's just like these warring voices in your head that like you literally cannot control. And I was like, I feel so seen by this. But it's just a lovely, I mean, if you guys have read any of John Green's books or seen any of the movie adaptations, like I just think John Green is fantastic. And like all my favorite book quotes are from his books. And they just did a really, really fantastic job. They tell a lovely, lovely story. And there's not even a whole lot I can say about it that's not going to totally give it away. But you guys should absolutely check it out if you haven't. Okay, bye.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, here me and you, let's keep it real honest.